Welcome to the Lincoln City Council meeting of August 1st, 2016. Let us all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a period of silent meditation.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
With LB 898, a copy of the Open Meetings Act is posted in the back of the chamber. I believe we have some announcements from the clerk, followed by a special presentation.
Yes, public notice, August 8th, 2016 will be our budget hearing. It will begin at 2:30 p.m. The public hearing will be on the 1- and 6-year street and highway program, the mayor's recommended 2016-18 biennial operating budget, and capital improvement program for 2016-2018, with a dinner break from 6 p.m. to 6:30 p.m.
All right, and is the mayor with us? I believe we have a special presentation. Tom.
Good afternoon. I'm Tom Cassidy, the Public Safety Director, and I'm taking the mayor's place this afternoon. He was called away. Today, the mayor is presenting the Award of Excellence for the month to Lincoln Police Officer Brian Ward. Brian, would you join me? Yes. Brian's been with the police department for 23 years. He works on the center team. He was nominated by his captain, Jason Stilley, in the categories of customer relations and productivity, primarily for his participation in helping to solve a bank robbery. Captain Stilley says that Officer Ward's discipline, his instinct, and dedication to the citizens of Lincoln are seldom matched. The most recent example occurred after a bank robbery on May 2nd of this year. As Officer Ward responded, he saw a person who matched the description that was rather vague, and this person was riding a bicycle about 10 blocks away from the robbery scene. Officer Ward, however, was on his way to the bank and responding to that call, but he felt that this person was at least similar enough to the description that he ought to be checked out. He called other officers as he continued on his way to the bank and coordinated the efforts of those officers to stop this person on the bicycle. This person tried to elude the officers, was quickly taken into custody, however, and found to be in possession of all the stolen money from the bank robbery, as well as carrying clothing that later was found on the surveillance video. It was a very good arrest. Captain Stilley wrote, "The bank robbery was cleared in less than 15 minutes, due in large part to Brian Ward's instinct and experience. While this is a great case, it's fairly typical work product for Officer Brian Ward." Another example occurred a few months earlier, and it involved the theft of an expensive amount of camera equipment from a vehicle. Officer Ward was handling another call, but when he overheard a suspicious person report about someone who was trying to sell equipment from a trailer that was being pulled by a bicycle, he looked for that person, found the suspect that was described, and indeed found camera gear and was able to determine that that gear had been stolen. Captain Stilley writes that each day Brian Ward demonstrates his experience as a veteran officer. He provides an excellent role model for new officers. He shows great compassion in serving the citizens of Lincoln. It's the mayor's pleasure to present Brian Ward with the Mayor's Award of Excellence for the month. Please join me in congratulating Brian for his hard work and his commitment to the city of Lincoln. Chief Blymeister's here. I'm sure that Jeff would like to say a few words.
Congratulations. Thank you, Chief. This is a great opportunity. Brian's family is here, and we do not do a good enough job of relaying to the family members of how proud we are of the actions of Brian. I've known Brian for a long, long time, and I had the opportunity to work with Brian when I was at the sheriff's office, and I can assure you that his involvement in this case is very typical of actions that he's done in the past. In fact, he was very instrumental and timely in a very dynamic incident involving sheriff's office personnel just a couple years ago, and his assistance led to a successful conclusion of that event. So, April, thank you for sharing Brian with us, and you should be very proud of his actions.
Brian, would you like to say a few words?
Yes. Thanks, council, and I just wanted to thank my family. April. Sorry, it's a joke. There's nothing written on my hand. My wife, April, my oldest daughter, Megan, my middle son, Cole, and youngest, Isabel, and my father-in-law, Patrick O'Donnell, joined us today. Thanks again.
Thank you. Keep up the good work.
Yes.
All right, we'll give folks a moment to exit the chambers. In the meantime, I'll go over the order of business. The clerk will call the items listed on our agenda under public hearing, and anyone wishing to speak on an item should come forward after the clerk reads that item. The applicant and those in favor should speak first, and then those who are opposed. The applicant may then make one short rebuttal. Each speaker should begin by stating name, address, and whether or not you're speaking in favor or opposition to the item. Testimony is limited to 5 minutes per speaker, and as a reminder, the clerk's timer will sound after 4 minutes. And after all public hearings, the council will vote on resolutions and on items listed under third reading on our agenda. On the second and last meetings of the month, immediately prior to adjournment, anyone may speak on any issue not on the agenda for that date nor planned for a future agenda. Will the clerk please call the first item of business?
Yes, our first item of business is our public hearing consent agenda, items 1 through 4.
Is there anyone here wishing to speak to any of these items on our consent agenda? Okay, seeing none, please call the item.
All right, if not, we can vote on these items. Item 1 was introduced by Eskridge.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded by Roy. Discussion? All right, please call the roll.
Fellers,
Yes.
Gaylor Baird,
Yes.
Lamb,
Yes.
Raybold,
Yes.
Camp,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
Eskridge.
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0. Next then are our public hearing liquor resolutions. We would ask those giving testimony to clearly state your name and addresses and to sign in on the sign-in sheet laying on the podium. On the liquor resolutions, those giving testimony are asked to come forward, raise their right hand for the clerk to administer the oath. After the oath, witnesses shall state their names and addresses. I'll call item 5, application of Rachel Rice Matson, doing business as Top Hat Tavern, for a special designated license to cover an indoor area measuring approximately 32 feet by 35 feet and an outdoor area measuring approximately 44 feet by 60 feet at 736 West Cornhusker Highway on August 6th from 2 p.m. to 1 a.m.
Hi. Rachel Rice Matson, 7101 Holdridge Street.
Thank you for being here today. Can you tell us a little bit about your application?
I applied for a temporary beer garden because we are having a poker run that's going to end at the Top Hat. And I want to make sure I have adequate space for people to come, so.
Any questions from the council? Carl?
Yeah, just why don't you tell the crowd the date of the event and the who it's to benefit?
It's August 6th, and it benefits Peyton, which is actually Diane's granddaughter. And she has medical bills. She has to have surgeries out of state. And so this money's gonna help pay for their travel to take her to get these surgeries, so.
Hope you have a good, successful event.
Can you share with us how old Miss Peyton is?
Peyton is 5.
5 years old. Okay.
She's sweet, really sweet, so.
Looked like she was sweet on the picture on
Wanna
the flyer.
do what we can to help out, so.
Great. Well, any other questions? All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak to this item? All right, Teresa, please call the next item.
All right, I'll call item 6 and 7. They're the application of Casey's General Store number 3515 for a Class D liquor license at 110 Northwest 20th Street and the related manager application of Tina Krings. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth as you verily believe it to be?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Michelle Kreitz. I'm the district manager for Casey's General Stores, address 2111 Southwest 18th Street.
Welcome, Ms. Kreitz. Can you please tell us about the application you have before us today?
We are opening a new store. It's going to be actually a new store style for Casey's as well, over on Northwest 20th and West O.
Any questions from the council? All right, Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak to this item? All right, Teresa, please call the next item.
All right, I'll call items 8 and 9. They're the application of Heinegill Inc., doing business as Dish Restaurant for a Class I liquor license at 1100 O Street, and the related manager application of Mary Pat Heineman.
Yes, that's me. I'm Mary Pat Heineman, 1025 South 36th Street.
You raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth as you verily believe it to be?
I do.
Thank you.
Welcome. Why don't you tell us about what we're doing here with Dish?
My wife and I purchased Dish Restaurant this morning, actually 9 o'clock this morning, from our friend and mentor Travis Green, who's decided to move on to more family-oriented profession. So we're looking forward to moving Dish into the future and kind of following his footsteps. So
Great. Well, congratulations.
thank you.
Any questions from the council? Carl?
Welcome. And, huge fan of
Thank
what
you.
the Dish has been,
Thank
and
you.
it's a great addition to downtown Lincoln. There are a lot of other good places, but this is probably my go-to place when I've got somebody here or a special evening. So what's the plan? What are you going to do for the future?
Well, right now we know that we learned a lot from Travis, and we're excited. We were both just overjoyed to get jobs there in the first place. So when he asked us to purchase the restaurant from him, we were honored. And really, we want to keep Dish the downtown Lincoln staple it has been. Of course, we'll put our own touches on it, but we just want to keep moving forward and keep this gem downtown for everyone. So
Well, thank you for your interest in doing that.
Yeah.
It's really important. So-
absolutely, absolutely.
All right. Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak to this item? All right, Teresa, please call the next.
All right, next is item 10, manager application of Jeremiah Jorgensen for Sam's Club at number 6413 at 4900 North 27th Street. Please raise your hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth as you verily believe it to be?
I do.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
How can we help you today?
Just like approval on the management application. I'm a new manager in town. I've been with the company for about 16 years. I've been running clubs for about 6 years. So my family and I just relocated to Lincoln about 45 days ago.
And are you Mr. Jorgensen?
What's that?
Are you Mr. Jorgensen?
Jorgensen. yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
great. Any questions? All right, thank you for being here.
All right, thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak to this item? All right, Teresa, please call the next item.
All right, next is the manager application of Katrine Zimmerman for Sooners or Later, Inc., doing business as Buffalo Wild Wings at 8701 Andermatt Drive.
Hello.
Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth as you verily believe it to be?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
My name is Katrin Zimmerman. My address is 4621 Happy Hollow Court in Lincoln, 68512, or 16, I'm sorry.
You tell us a little bit about your application.
All right, so I have been with Buffalo Wild Wings for coming to 12 years now. I am the regional manager. I worked my way up in the company, and I just plan on taking over the liquor license because I have been with the company for so long and plan on staying here, so it makes the most sense for me to be on the liquor license.
Okay. Any questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you. Sorry.
Would anyone else like to speak to this item? All right, please call the next item, Teresa.
All right, next is item 12, application of Blue Blood Brewing Company, doing business as Blue Blood Brewing Company for an addition to their licensed premises to add the entire cave complex at 925 Robbers Cave Road. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth as you verily believe it to be?
Yes.
Thanks, Brian.
I'm Brian Podwinski with Blue Blood Brewing. Address is 9322 South 28th Street. Basically, this is one of the last steps we have for the Robbers Cave property. The cave itself was not prepared to be open to the public when we first opened our location. Now that it's done, all the inspections are complete, we're ready to add it to the liquor license to start doing events down inside.
Okay, any questions? Carl?
You just missed us, though. That's why you're here.
Yes, and I'll
Yeah.
be back some more, but
Okay, all
we'll
right.
see.
Well, that's good.
Yeah,
So,
I'm not done.
so you opened your new facility how long ago?
May 4th,
Okay.
yes,
So you've been at this 3 months now?
Right.
How's it going?
great. It's been going really well. So that's why we want to get this cave done now. We can continue to do more things and offer more items, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
Okay, great.
Trent?
That's why we want to get this cave done now. Don't think that's ever been said at liquor hearing, but I'll defer to my colleagues.
You may not hear that again either.
Yeah, we
There's not
probably
many
would.
caves around.
So does this mean that we can all enjoy a beer and the bats together?
That's right. We have a lot of stuff we're working on, and we are finishing up the bat area as well, so that way as fall comes, they're ready to go, and we can not disturb them and keep their home there, I should say. There's a lot of moving parts, and some more fun announcements coming later this week as well. So create more work for the city clerk staff, and I appreciate their hard work.
John?
Well, having encountered bats in the past, how exactly are you going to protect the public from the bats?
We have actually a tunnel within the third tunnel, actually. So the bats will be separated. It's going to be more like a zoo enclosure, to where the bats will have their freedom to come and go, but then you won't be able to directly interact with them unless you go through a special door and whatnot. So,
Bat cave.
I was going to say, my 12-year-old son would probably love it if you didn't call it Robber's Cave, but called it the Bat Cave.
yes, we have a lot of requests for that. We need to see if we can get a light shining on the silo behind us. So we'll see if we can work on that.
That'd be cool.
All right. Thank you so
All
much
right,
for being
thank
with
you.
us. Would anyone else like to testify on the Bat Cave item? No? Okay. Please call the next item.
Yes, the next one is item 13, application of SMG Food and Beverage for a special designated license to cover an outdoor area measuring approximately 176 feet by 83 feet by 56 feet, labeled Stadium Terrace, an outdoor area measuring approximately 1,222 feet by 490 feet, labeled Festival Space, and an outdoor area measuring approximately 2,082 feet by 18 feet, labeled Pedestrian Bridge, at Pinnacle Bank Arena at 400 Pinnacle Arena Drive on August 18th, 19th, and 20th from 11 a.m. to 1 a.m.
Good afternoon. I'm Tom Lorenz, General Manager of SMG Lincoln and Pinnacle Bank Arena. It's somewhat historic today that we get to come before you. This is our 20th application for RibFest. This is our 20th year of RibFest. We have seen it continue to be a strong community event throughout the years, and we're very pleased to be able to bring it to Lincoln again in the new festival space. We've been able to do it there for a couple of years. The main differences this year is it'll be a 3-day event. It'll be Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. We won't be doing Sunday morning. We have some new vendors, but essentially the layout is the same as it has been the last couple years in the festival space to the north of Pinnacle Bank Arena across the tracks. New vendors, great bands, and it's a very good family atmosphere. There will be parking in the Salt Dogs lots this year, so we can park right next to it. And also we'll still have the bridge connection back to the rail yard, so lots of folks like to go there first and come back afterwards. Any questions?
Any questions? All right.
All right, thank you very
Good
much.
luck. Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak to this item? All right, Teresa, please call the next item.
Item 14, application of Down the Hatch for a special designated license to cover an outdoor area measuring approximately 30 feet by 80 feet at 5601 Northwest 1st Street on August 13th from noon to 8 p.m.
Is the applicant here today? All right.
I did speak with her last week.
Okay.
Oh.
No one here from Down the Hatch? All right, please call the next item, Teresa.
All right, next then is application of Empyrean Brewing Company for a special designated license to cover an indoor area measuring approximately 70 feet by 70 feet and an outdoor area measuring approximately 50 feet by 50 feet at 300 South 7th Street on August 18th from 5 p.m. to 11 p.m.
Hi, Jim Engelbart, 3340 Franklin Street, Lincoln, Nebraska.
Welcome back.
Good to be here. Good to see you all again this month. Another application for our monthly Tour de Brew series this month, featuring the Lincoln Animal Ambassadors as our charity this month. I made sure I knew before I came. Yeah, so as we've done the last few months, securing some of our outdoor area for access to porta potties, and also for people to be able to park their bikes and be able to get back and forth to their bike if they need to with a beverage in hand.
Jane.
And it starts at Cycle Works, is that right? Or where
It
does
starts
start?
actually at Moran's Liquor Works over on 33rd and A Street. Cycle Works is the second stop.
Stop,
Yeah.
okay.
Any other
Where
questions?
where it goes from there, I don't know. I just know they all end up at our place. That's where the final stop.
All right. Any other questions? No? Okay, thank you for being with us today. Would anyone else like to testify on this item? Okay.
Madam Chair, I would move approval of items 5 through 13 and 15.
Okay, we had a second.
Second.
Moved by John, seconded by Trent. Discussion? All right, please call the roll.
Fellers,
Yes.
Gaylor Baird,
Yes.
Lamb,
Yes.
Raybold,
Yes.
Camp,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
Eskridge.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
And Madam Clerk, could you refresh us on down the hatch on their notice and so forth? Was it the usual,
Yes,
or?
I believe I emailed them and I spoke with her on the telephone.
Okay. Madam Chair, I would move item 14 be held over for next week.
Second.
Okay, delay moved by John, seconded by Roy. Discussion? All right, please call the roll, Teresa.
Fellers,
Yes.
Gaylor Baird,
Yes.
Lamb,
Yes.
Raybold,
Yes.
Camp,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
Eskridge.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. All right, next then, our public hearing resolutions. Item 16, accepting the report of new and pending claims against the city and approving disposition of claims set forth for the period of July 1st through the 15th, 2016.
I believe we have someone who would like to speak. Welcome back.
Welcome. Well, I hope you guys got a chance to look it over and vote on it. Jeff said that you were gonna vote on it and decide. I drove it, it came to 1.1 miles from where that stopped, and it depends where the police stopped to chase at. But like I tried to say to you, Jeff, is when somebody does something bad, they're still running days afterwards. So to say that, you know, he was in a high-speed chase, I don't know. Are we crazy to chase people? I still want to know, is there evil in this world, you know? Because the guy that says hit him, or blow up that abortion clinic, we don't go after them. We go after the guy that does it.
Could you state your name for the record?
Excuse me, Mark Smith, 545 North 6, Seward, Nebraska.
Thank you.
And I think everybody was here 2 weeks ago, except maybe John and Roy. What it was, Roy and John, was it was like on the, it was a high-speed chase. They started at 10th and Cornhusker. Okay. My boy lives in a duplex over on 28th and Fair. Okay. And he had my pickup, and it was parked in front of his house, and suppose it was a high-speed chase, alcoholic, no license, no insurance, and chase started at 10th and Cornhusker. They said they stopped the chase at Fair, 27th and Fair. He was driving on the wrong side of the street. They tried to put the stakes out to flatten his tires, and he got over to 28th and ran in the back of the pickup, where he was disabled as far as he couldn't go nowhere, and the police arrested him and he ran, I guess. Was that how it was, Jeff? He ran, and they found him and the two girls in a house and took him to jail. But I don't carry collision on my truck, and I just figure, you know, he doesn't have any insurance. The city was wrong for, I don't know, what should we do? Not chase people? You know? It's a real gray area where, you know, and somebody said, well, go ask the city council if they feel that, you know, the county attorney, I thought it was gonna be a county deal, and the county attorney told me, yeah, we'd pay it, Mark. Well, he says they ain't gonna pay it, so. But the county attorney said they'd paid it. So that's where we're at. Then you asked, Carl, didn't you ask for the 2-week extension? And I never heard back from him or anybody else, so I'm sitting at the house and I'm saying, oh, I think today's Monday, city council, I better go.
Yep.
So, but tell me, is there evil? You know, do people know when they do wrong?
Let's hope so.
The sad thing is, some don't. You know, I remember in '72 when George Bush was the head of the CIA, and he says, "We'll let these countries take care of their own terrorists."
Mr. Smith, is there anything else you'd like us to know about your
No.
application? Because your time
No.
is running out.
No.
I just want to make sure you.
No,
have the-
that's it.
Okay.
And I guess I was upset that Jeff didn't call me or had the, courtesy to let me know. But he says they sent a letter, so.
Okay.
You guys, you had all the paperwork on it.
Okay. Thank you. You
Okay.
may have a seat. Are there staff questions on this,
Yeah.
Carl? John?
Well,
Carl,
on
then
any
John?
issue?
Yeah.
or- Yes. Well, on this particular one, did you want to
Yes.
ask? Oh, go ahead
Jeff
on that
Patrick,
first. I
City
had
Attorney.
another item.
Jeff, this issue really wasn't brought up before, but something in the documentation made me question the dollar amount. Has law looked at that issue at all?
No, we have not. It's not our practice to look at the dollar amount if we're recommending denial. He submitted bills. I would tell you that off the top of my head, I've got no reason to question the amount that he's submitting. I don't know that we've looked at those, frankly.
Yeah.
We looked at the liability issue, and that's where we decided to recommend denial to the council.
I guess, as I recall back from our hearing 2 weeks ago, what's the year of the vehicle?
98 Ford F-150.
So I don't,
Worth about 5,000.
so that's my question. If it's a vehicle worth 3,000 or 4,000, then the claim here is for nearly 7,000, so.
It would probably get
Okay. All right. Right now, this is between the city attorney and the council, so.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so there would appear to be a money question, I guess, if this were to be something that council were to approve.
Well, if this was an issue where we felt that the city had some liability, we may well have entered into some negotiations with the claimant and questioned the amount or tried to reach some accommodation. When it's a matter where we don't think the city was at fault, then we don't typically enter into settlement negotiations.
Okay, thank
But
you.
I can tell you, and this is something that doesn't come before the council because those are
Right.
claims that are settled, is it's not unusual for us to enter into those sort of negotiations on claims where we feel we have some liability.
Are there other questions for Jeff? Jeff, you had more time to review this. Can you just reiterate for those who weren't here last time what you shared with me in an email when we had some discussion on this item and as to the reasons for your conclusion of denial?
Yes, and there are not a lot of police chase cases that come before this council, and I think that's a reflection of good sense on the behalf of LPD. The law in Nebraska is strict liability on police pursuit cases. If there's causation between the accident and the fact that it was a police chase. In this case, there was a police chase, there was an accident. However, the law in Nebraska is that if a driver reasonably concludes that the pursuit had ended and then is involved in an accident, the strict liability no longer applies. And so when we analyzed this case, it was clear there was a police pursuit, the police pursuit ended. Sometime after that, not long after that, this accident happened. The question is, was that causal chain broken? Would a reasonable driver in that circumstance have concluded that the pursuit had ended? And so when we looked at the police reports and what happened, the police were pursuing this driver down North 27th Street. At some point, the driver drove over the median, still on 27th Street, North 27th Street, still headed south on North 27th Street, but after he drove over the median, he was headed the wrong way on a divided highway. And it was at that point the LPD decided that they should end pursuit, turned off the light and sirens, and the driver proceeded going the wrong way down North 27th Street. The collision that Mr. Smith is submitting his claim for happened about 1.2 miles down the road. He actually turned off at North 27th, and that's when he ran into Mr. Smith's truck. So there were when we did our analysis of it, looking at it in context, we concluded that a reasonable driver would have known that the police pursuit had ended. You had lights and sirens were turned off, the length of that he drove prior to being in the collision, and the fact that he was driving the wrong way down the divided highway were all things that we looked at in concluding that a reasonable driver would have known police pursuit had ended, and there was a significant interval of time between the end of the pursuit and the collision that occurred.
Any other questions? Right. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Were there any others who wanted to speak to this item? John, you had a question. Is it on this
Well,
item?
I'd like a little more clarification, if I could, Mr. Kirkpatrick, on the Harder claim that
Okay,
was denied.
can I address that with you?
You sure may.
I have been in communication with Mr. and Mrs. McFarland, and I have asked Public Works and Law to take another look at this. These were 4 residences, 2 of them owned by the Harders, I believe, that were, there was a sewer backup on the 9th of May. And
Of this year.
Of this year. And so they sent a letter, and I've given that to Public Works and asked them to take another look at it, and I will move today that those 3 claims be removed from the denied section.
So the McFarland and then the.
McFarland, Harder, and Wells.
Okay.
Where it's all the same neighborhood, and so
Then I will wait.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other folks wishing to address a claim item? Okay. Teresa, please call the next item.
Yes, next is item 17, approving the use of public right-of-way by Union College for construction of seating walls, columns, arches, lighting fixtures, and monument walls at South 48th and Prescott Avenue.
Bob Simmering from the Public Works Department. We have a request from Union College related to a remodeling project they're doing that will build a sidewalk, or some arches over sidewalk. Can I have this? This arch and this arch extend over the sidewalk, which would be built in the public right-of-way. This is a wide right-of-way. It's in excess of 80 feet. We're maintaining a clear zone from the curb to the monuments in excess of 8 feet. And we do have one utility conflict, which is being addressed with a relocation of a short section of water line. I believe the applicant is here if there's questions specifically about the project.
Okay. Carl?
Could you just enlarge that a little bit, dear?
Maybe.
Yeah, just on the front, yeah. Here we go. Great, that's better, thank you. Okay.
Right. Any questions for Bob? This is the, oh, did you, go ahead, Trent.
This would kind of match some of the, this would kind of match some of the arches that they have further on down towards the north.
That is correct.
Kind of
I
bring
can
the whole
put a-
campus together, be a front window for them or front door.
There's another view of that.
Looks pretty cool. Thanks.
And did you state the location? This is at 48th and Prescott.
48th and Prescott,
Right.
and this is on Prescott.
Okay, great. Any other questions? All right, thank you. Would anyone else like to speak to this item?
Hello and thank you. My name is Matthew Roque and I represent Union College. That's at 3800 South 48th Street, Lincoln, Nebraska 68506. I do have handouts if you guys would like zoomed in pictures. I don't know if that's appropriate, but.
Absolutely.
Yeah, will be good.
To the clerk, thank you.
This year, Union College will be celebrating its 125th anniversary. We opened in the fall of 1891, and it is about time that we have a front entrance to campus. We are very excited about this project. It's a project that's, we're guessing that will be about $500,000 to $600,000. And right now, as Bob mentioned, we are working with Public Works on the small utility issue that we're still trying to figure out. However, we're excited about this project and want to continue moving forward. Do you have any questions?
Any questions? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Congratulations on the anniversary.
Thank you.
All right, would anyone else like to speak to this item? All right. Any further staff questions? Okay. Seeing none, please call the next item, Teresa.
All right, next is item 18, approving a contract between the city and Selectron Technologies for an integrated interactive voice response system for a 4-year term with the option to renew for one additional 1-year term.
Hi, I'm Lana Tolbert with Building and Safety. I'm appearing on behalf of Chad Blaha, who was called away to a meeting. And we would respectfully ask that council delay any action on this item till September 12th.
Okay. All right. Any questions? All right. Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak to this item? All right. Seeing none, please.
So,
oh, go ahead.
Just to
Carl.
clarify, then, that would be, when we get to that point, a delay with public hearing.
Would be appropriate.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Teresa, can you please call the next item?
Yes, next then are public hearing ordinances, second reading, item 19, amending section 12.08.270 of the Lincoln Municipal Code to expand the list of outdoor and indoor city-owned locations where alcoholic beverages can be served for specific activities and events.
Good afternoon. My name is Glenn Johnson. I am the Parks and Recreation Director. This is a proposed amendment to section 1208.270 of the Lincoln Municipal Code. In general, alcoholic beverages are not allowed in public parks. Over time, there have been some exceptions that have been added to this ordinance, and that's essentially what we're proposing today, is some additional exceptions to be added. One of those is there are provisions in the code for 6 outdoor locations where alcohol can be served during fundraising activities that benefit a city department. I would tell you that over time, the foundation, our Parks Foundation, has had 1 or 2 events a year. In scheduling outdoor events in Nebraska, you always have to kind of think about what might happen with weather, and we always struggle with having an indoor location where we could move those events to. And so part of the intent of this amendment today is to add 2 indoor locations that could serve as primarily the backup locations for outdoor locations. Those are the Jane Snyder Trail Center in Union Plaza and Auld Pavilion in Antelope Park. We're also proposing to add 1 additional covered location, and that would be the stage at Pinewood Bowl. The Parks Foundation, probably 4 or 5 years ago, had a very nice event there. Because alcohol was not allowed, there was no alcohol allowed during that event, and it is, I think it's almost tradition at this point, almost an expectation anyway, that people have the opportunity to have a nice glass of wine, or if they're at a nice fundraising event. So that would be the intent with that. There is a provision in here that allows for the Parks and Recreation Department to work with the operator of Pinnacle Bank Arena for events out at Pinewood Bowl. And one of the intents here is to clarify that language, to essentially make it read clear that the intent really is that it is the contracted manager for the Pinnacle Bank Arena that has the ability to serve alcohol during events out at Pinewood Bowl. And as an example, the concerts that are happening out there this summer, as well as the last 2 summers, are the kinds of events that would be happening there. I want to bring to the City Council's attention that there was a provision, or there is a provision included in here, really 2 provisions for Tower Square. We met with the Internal Liquor Control Committee, and the recommendation of that committee was that we withdraw, or that Tower Square be amended out of this, and there is a motion to amend that will be coming to the City Council next week. The intent is that there be additional discussion about if alcohol is going to be allowed in Tower Square, and if so, under what conditions or what guidelines would be in place for that. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have this afternoon.
John?
Yes, Mr. Johnson, as I had mentioned this earlier, as you see it, how many possible events would this have? That this could occur if you had your rained out? I know last year you gave us a report there was one.
It's a great question. Right now, the ordinance allows for nonprofit organizations that are organized specifically for the benefit of a city department. And right now in Lincoln, that's the Lincoln Parks Foundation, it's the Libraries Foundation, and it is the foundation that is associated with Aging Partners. So any one of those nonprofit organizations could request an event. By practical matters, it's really been the Lincoln Parks Foundation and the Friends of Pioneers Park Nature Center, and I should have mentioned them, that have done these events on an annual basis. Typically, it's been 1 to 3 events a year, so this is a fairly uncommon activity. We have a very limited number of these that occur on an annual basis.
Now, this is just in case of rain that they could use the facilities?
Well, the way that it's written, it would allow for an event to be scheduled directly into one of those indoor facilities. I would tell you as a practical matter that places like Sunken Gardens, Stransky Park, Hazel Label Park, they're very attractive outdoor facilities. And so the intent always is to utilize those attractive outdoor facilities. So while an event could be scheduled directly into all, I think as a practical matter, that they would always serve primarily as the backup, because we'd like to use one of those very attractive outdoor locations for the event.
Okay.
Any other questions? Lynn, can you tell us how these fundraisers actually benefit the departments? You mentioned the foundations, but can you help us connect the dots?
Yeah, and I'll speak specifically about what the Lincoln Parks Foundation has done. On occasion, these have been fundraising events, and so they do help raise funds for specific projects. When the foundation has had a capital campaign, a lot of times we've had one of these events, and it has helped raise funds for that capital event, or that capital campaign. I would also note that these events are also important in terms of just fundraising. This is a great way to reach out to the base that supports the Lincoln Parks Foundation, ultimately the Parks and Recreation Department. I know that Susan Larson Rodenberg is here today. She's planning on testifying. I think the other thing that you'll hear is this is an important part of donor stewardship. A lot of times we'll use these events to say thank you for people who have been instrumental in capital campaigns. So this is really, at least for the Parks and Recreation Department and the Lincoln Parks Foundation, this is a great way to reach out and engage our donors in a whole variety of ways.
Carl.
Thank you. Len, I appreciate you're doing this. The Internal Liquor Committee, as you indicated, met, and thank you for meeting with us then, and all the others that participated. It was a good discussion. One of the reasons why that was removed was that what you proposed, or what was proposed by the Parks Board, I guess that's where this came from, was treated the Tower Square differently, really, than the other facilities, and not only allowing the kinds of events that you're proposing here, but also larger events that would be sponsored by DLA that could potentially close off the facility to other uses and those kinds of things. So anything that you would add to that?
Yeah, Councilman Eskridge, you're exactly right. That change really is kind of a departure of the amendments that have been included here at this point. The proposal to allow alcohol to be served in Tower Square was really guided by interest in having events downtown, and perhaps music events, gatherings downtown that would activate Tower Square as part of downtown activity center. And so this is a very different provision than what we've seen in the past. And as I think we discussed with the Internal Liquor Committee, we want to be very sensitive about how we do this, because we know that there's residents there, we know that there are adjoining businesses, and so we appreciate the time for further exploration to see, does this make sense, and if so, what sort of guidelines should be in place, because as you say, this is a different approach than we've had in the past with these other
Okay.
with these other elements.
So we will have some additional discussion over time without a rush to get something passed through, to make sure that whatever's approved there in terms of guidelines or usage would be appropriate.
Absolutely.
Okay, great.
I noticed in the staff report there was some information about the Jane Snyder Trails Center and the viability of the restaurant. That seemed like another piece that's maybe a little bit different. Can you speak to that?
Thank you, yes, and I apologize, I should have mentioned that. The amendment to the ordinance does include the Jane Snyder Trails Center, which is the indoor space that's on the south end of the building in Union Plaza, located at 21st and Q Street. Essentially, what this amendment would do would be to allow one of the 3 condominium owners in that space to serve alcohol in the Jane Snyder Trails Center under written agreement. And I can tell you a little bit about the intent of this. We've been approached by the owners of the Hub Cafe. They would on occasion like to have events in the Jane Snyder Trails Center. We are exploring that possibility. If this moves forward, this legislation would allow for an agreement to be drafted between the city and the owners of the Hub Cafe, allowing them to serve alcohol in that space during their events, really. And I apologize, I should have mentioned that one.
Cindy.
So the Hub would be sponsoring events that are not or fundraisers?
Correct, yeah, they would not necessarily need to be fundraising events. They might have a special dinner or something, and they would want to expand their seating capacity, and they do have the ability to use the Jane Snyder Trails Center on occasion in that way. Today, they could serve dinner in that space as part of their regular business activities, but they would not be allowed to serve alcohol. And so if this provision is passed, and then if we get a written agreement in place, it would allow them to serve alcoholic beverages during dinners or other kind of events that they would schedule in the space.
John.
In that case of the Hub, would they have to get a special permit from us to serve, or would they get a blanket liquor license over that?
I think either of those approaches. I think when we've discussed this with them in the past, they've expressed interest in expanding their liquor license to potentially include the Jane Snyder Trail Center space, so they wouldn't have to get a special designated, an SDL or a special designated license for each one of those events, because they'd already have the space license. Now, those are details that are yet to be worked out, and we'd probably want to include which method they secure the ability or the approval to serve alcohol in that space in a written agreement that we would have with them.
You know, those are wonderful people that run the park and all. I guess I'd be concerned though about full-time licensing of a park like that. I'd just be concerned.
Yeah, if there is concern, like I say, we can determine the method or the timing, the method by which they would be allowed to serve alcohol in that space. We could use the SDL process.
And that might be the approach, so we could see how it would go to be equitable. And I'm thinking of other businesses around the city, and you know, we might get the folks down at Tower Square want to move next door. And I mean, it's just it opens the door for a number of things. And again, because it's park and the nature of that, I think it's important to keep the integrity, yet also I want to see Hub be successful. So.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you. We'll take that advice.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you, Lynn.
Thank you.
I believe we have some other folks here to testify on this item.
Hello, everyone. I'm Susan Larson Rodenberg, and I'm with Lincoln Parks Foundation. I'm here today to talk about the amendment to the ordinance. Christy Dianasopoulos of Lincoln Parks Foundation couldn't be here today, so she wanted me to come and speak to this amendment. As you know, the Lincoln Parks Foundation is a private 501c3 that raises private money for city projects above and beyond what's included in the city's annual funding for general maintenance and capital funds. I've worked for the Lincoln Parks Foundation since about 2000. To help raise private funds for these parks projects. And we've been very successful. We've raised about $21 million over the years for projects like Sunken Gardens, Union Plaza, Centennial Mall, Sherman Field, and most recently Woods Tennis Center. We appreciate your support on that. We feel like this is very important to have opportunities to have fundraisers in parks so we can show what we've done and, as Lynn said, continue to friend raise to show the importance of private dollars and how they leverage our public funds to provide wonderful amenities for our community. I think Lynn pretty much covered some of the main issues, so I will be available to answer any questions that you have. We don't have a ton of fundraising events in the parks, but we like to have at least one a year. And an opportunity, discussion that's always come up is if we have something in Hazel Able or Sunken Gardens, where's our backup? Where's our indoor backup? So that would be, something that we would really appreciate, having an indoor location for those type of events. So at this point, I hope that you consider it, and so we can continue to work together in these private-public partnerships. Any questions?
John.
Yeah, that's good to see you, Ms. Rodenberg. As far as the events and the alcohol service, in the past, I know we've discussed whether you have a full bar or wine and beer. What's been the tradition here in recent years?
I know
you'd
might
like
have to
get
help me
people
with this.
I know you want the checkbooks to get loose.
Yeah,
but,
we are not real hardcore. We basically, I think we've had some wine and beer in the past. We had an event a few years ago at the Rose Garden, I believe. I don't know if any of you were there, but we had a caterer, and if I recall, it was mostly wine, maybe beer, I don't know. It wasn't, and then we had a full dinner also catered as well. Pinewood Bowl, as you mentioned, we were not able to have wine at that event. Sunken Gardens, we've had mostly just wine.
It's typically been wine.
Yeah.
The one event that Susan mentioned, there was a cash bar at the beginning of that event that,
Okay.
that served hard liquor. That's uncommon, to be perfectly honest. Typically it is beer or wine. When the Friends of Pinehurst Park Nature Center do events, typically it's beer. They're typically having brats and beer and some animal, bison, bats, bees.
Just go out on the range and shoot somebody and grill them. Well, so if you're not using the hard liquor, again, with the parks and so forth, I just think the nature of it being family oriented, I'd reinforce, I think, statements I've made over the years that a wine and beer is a nice flavor to have, and I appreciate that. But the hard liquor part, it just feels just doesn't fit as much. So I'm glad you done that.
I think you're exactly right. We just have to balance it and have a very elegant event that is. It's incredible to have an event in a park that we've all worked so hard on to make so beautiful, and the opportunities to do that are very rare. And so it can be a very nice event if we can be able to have a glass of wine along with that.
And am I recalling correctly that when you do have those types with the wine and beer, that it's adults only?
Yeah, pretty much, yes. It's basically a fundraising opportunity for adults.
Maybe I'm thinking the Children's Zoo. I know it does
Yeah.
do adults only.
No,
but
I don't think we have any children attend.
We do not. We do not. Yeah, typically, when we've done events in parks, they've been closed to the general public. And we obviously comply with the liquor control regulations, and they have been adults-only events when alcohol's been available.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thank you. Would anyone else like to come down and testify?
Hello, I'm Krista Dittman, the owner of Hub Cafe in the Jane Schneider Trail Center, and I would just like to voice my appreciation for our city partners at the Trail Center for applying creativity, time, and energy to move forward with this matter and discuss the possibilities of what can happen. I'm sure it would seem somewhat self-serving to me to say it would be wonderful to have a blanket license for the Jane Schneider for us to host catering events there. I do think that it would also benefit the city. That is a rental space, and the more people that you have in there is the more dollars that come your way as well. I think there are a lot of points to discuss yet in the details of how we can do those things. But the demographic of the people that want to use the parks, they want to be engaged in their communities, they want to be engaged in the environment. I think that's one thing that the trails provides Lincoln, and they want to be involved with things that are promote their community. So whether it's fundraising or they want to engage. So I appreciate the time that you've taken to entertain this notion of moving forward.
John and Carl?
Well, Ms. Dittman, you heard my remarks about the using SDLs versus a blanket license. Is that something that is workable for you, and to see how this goes?
I think that's a point of discussion, and we will certainly follow whatever recommendations and the Liquor Commission regulations. I understand your perspective and also the ramifications for other spaces. So I think that we'll continue to talk about that.
Okay, we can try it that way if you get that far.
Yeah,
Okay, thank
hopefully.
you.
Carl?
Thank you. Thanks for the great service you've brought to our community. Either way, you'll have to come back, I'm afraid. If you do seek to add to your liquor license, you'll have to come back for a hearing on that, or if you have special designated license requests, then you'll have to come back multiple times for those. And I'm not sure which is the most appropriate. Typically, if it's a space that you don't control all the time, then the SDL may be the best, but we'll let law and others smarter than I am figure that out.
I know it's complicated, and there are a lot of things already set in place that we
Okay.
need to have good counsel on.
Okay, great.
All right, and could you just leave your address with us as well, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
Somebody keep.
All right, would anyone else like to speak to this item?
Jeremiah, you can come over this way.
Hello, Jeremiah Moore. I'm here today in support of this amending the code, municipal code, extending some of the areas where they're allowed to serve alcoholic beverages during special events. In particular, the part I'm here for today is the part that sounds like we're going to be holding off and kind of looking at again, but I still wanted to come here and share kind of our thoughts and desires for using the public space. In particular, it's the Tower Square. You have to forgive me my rudimentary put together space just to kind of show you a little bit of what we're thinking. I've worked 12 years in Lincoln, Nebraska doing concert productions. We've hosted an array of successful events. One in particular downtown was a great spot, and the reason we picked the spot was, for me, it's got to be an engaging location when you're doing an event downtown, when you're trying to bring people in for entertainment. Over the course of the last couple of years, we've watched our number of ticket sales percentage come up with larger and larger amounts of people coming from outside of Lincoln, which shows that people are coming to town when we have these special events going on. 2015 in particular, 66% of our tickets were bought from outside of Lincoln. Furthermore, what I've been spinning my wheels and pushing myself to the next things we want to do with some of these larger special events. We hosted one down in 2014 in October, an EDM artist, Skrillex, down on 14th and N Street, or 13th and N Street, excuse me. And the amount of kind of buzz that created really kind of got us thinking about that it would be neat to do more events. I've spent the last 2 summers traveling around to different cities and seeing what happens in different towns. A lot of college markets and college towns, they have events happening quite regularly. Lincoln's been doing that more and more so. From my perspective, we'd like to engage that and keep the college students and keep the people in downtown Lincoln engaged in seeing these outdoor events. It also helps keep our part of downtown. I also am part owner of a business downtown, the Bourbon Theater. It also keeps relevance to our area. Lincoln's put a lot of good work into a lot of different parts of town, but some of that core downtown area, we've all felt the strain of, you know, all the focus going down in different areas. It's great. Lincoln's expanding. People are moving around the town instead of just centralizing in downtown. But we'd like to keep doing those concerts. We'd like to do events that could open up the ability for Lincoln to keep that cool, hip edge. And that's what I kind of specialize in with the concert industry. On this, what I just drew up, you can't really see it, apparently, my pen writing on these. But in this area here, we're presenting a stage that would be right here with a viewing area all along in the Tower Square area. It's a great area. I've stood there and imagined it, and I think it does a great representation of the beauty of downtown Lincoln, of a really neat spot where your environment feels like a place you want to be in. What we'd be presenting, and this is just all rough ideas, is doing separate gates for entry, having a backstage area for the bus parking for the artists, having concessions, and porta potty service for everybody too. This would be an event where we would set up early that afternoon and be torn down 4 o'clock in the morning so the roads could open back up. We've been talking with Parks and Rec and the special events team about different ways of doing this and how we'd work with the Downtown Lincoln Association in coordinating this, and also highlighting some nonprofits in town that directly deal with music, KZUM and here in Nebraska. So today I just wanted to come and support, show a little bit of, you know, kind of our ideas, and present to you my excitement and encouragement of keeping Lincoln hip and cool and having more entertainment options for everyone in town. Do you have any questions?
Carl?
Yes, thanks. Mr. Ward, you're at Bourbon Theater, is that?
Yes, sir.
Is that right? So the Skrillex concert, that was part of, you were the promoters of that, as I recall?
Yes, and me and
Okay.
a promotion company from Omaha put that together.
Yeah. And that was a big deal. It was, yeah.
It's a great event.
Yeah. We heard, at least I heard, and I don't know about my colleagues, but I heard from people in Capitol Beach and Woods Park and near South, and lots of people that also heard the concert. And so there was a concern about, you know, the volume of the noise, and obviously Skrillex is a loud group.
We definitely tipped it on the louder side of loud for that one.
So this also will impact the community, and I mean, you talked about, you know, wanting to make it convenient for people and not closing streets longer than necessary, and said that to do that you would be taking down the stage and having the streets cleared by 4 a.m. That's noisy work. Okay, even that without amplification, and you've got residents sleeping or trying to sleep right in the area, you know, within feet really of where your stage is going to be. That's why we're delaying this. There's so many questions that we have about how this would actually operate, what it would do to the nature of the square. Again, kind of facing the stage almost toward Love Library. So if you've got students there cramming for an exam or something going on, what does this do to them and their efforts? So there are just a lot of questions we need to kind of resolve and see how this could possibly
I think
work.
that's the most prudent way to go through it, is just look at all the things that may happen. You know, you bring up the idea of closing down will still be noisy. I think there's ways that we do the noisy part first. We leave the street sweeper till the end. And, you know, there's different things that we could consider, and I appreciate having the conversations about it.
All right, great, thank you.
Trent, then John.
You brought up an interesting point of location, being the centerpiece of what you're trying to do. Can you expand on that a little bit? Because in the ILC hearing, I think I was one of the people that took issue with one of the only public spaces that we have that's a quarter city block in downtown Lincoln being open to everybody. But can you expand on the location, and maybe there's some way that we can work? I understand Tower Square probably is the first choice, but maybe there's another place that you could do it where it might accomplish your goal of location as well.
Okay. For me, environment is a huge part of your experience when you're at an entertainment event. You could go to see a country artist in a barn with a dirt floor versus going to Pinnacle Bank Arena. You know, two different completely experiences. For me, doing something outside downtown, having the backdrop of some of what Lincoln has to boast is pretty important. When we did the Skrillex events, it felt like major city downtown in that area,
Yeah.
13th and N. It just has that kind of vibe, that feel. With what we're hoping to do, it's a sense of branding to where we're doing these events in a neat area that feels like a great environment. When we have people coming into town, they want to come back. When the artists are there and the artists feel good about where they're playing. Because that's one of the big things when we're talking with these agencies, like, well, where are you going to put my guys? And they want to know that it's going to be something that's comfortable. With the past event we did a recap video, and that thing's got tens of thousands of views from people looking at it. And I think primarily because it was interesting to look at. The backdrop was great. So it's not just more for that one event, doing a one event there. It's more of an idea of doing a branded event so people have this expectation of a great environment and a great time. And I think the backdrop and the location is key to that. I'm open to other areas. This is just after the one spot, we have that beautiful bike lane now, but it just kind of makes it so we can't use that. This was the next place that kind of caught my eye, that made me feel like this would be a good spot to transform into a special event for an evening.
Okay. And what is your goal, to try to do an event like this every year in a location, or move it around, or is this one of those things where you're trying to do this in this location and in this location for a certain period of time? Like, give me some idea of what you're...
Sure. Our hopes and dreams would be to create a series that could happen.
Okay.
Where there could be a series of concert events that we could do, so it becomes something where people have that to rely on. One of my favorite things to do when I'm traveling is see what random's happening on. The more events that we have in Lincoln, the more people who are here, and it just becomes, oh, we're going to Lincoln. We know something's going to be happening. So for us, it's a series that we'd like to do, and start off with an event and then be able to start planning once we work out all the kinks on how it works with that downtown area.
Okay. So the music scene's pretty strong in Lincoln.
It's exceptionally strong.
Okay. And so, and you need more venues.
We need more venues and unique locations to do them. The concert industry as a whole, there's a lot more people going back towards the touring market. And being Lincoln, Nebraska, for us, we're at a certain level. We've hit that level where we could go at the theater. And so the next thing is going outdoors and still supplying entertainment in that way.
But you as an operator probably aren't... Are there barriers to using like the festival space? Are there barriers to using Canopy Street or other venues like Pinewood Bowl? Or
Sure, I think there's the hurdles that we would have to look at when we got to them. The festival space, I know Tom would work great with us, and we'd be able to utilize that. But again, for me, it comes down to really having this environment that feels like something that is a part of downtown, because we're wanting to show that Lincoln is a hip place to be, and a way that you do that is your environment.
Okay.
Canopy Street is great, but again, for me, I'm from the downtown area and work with a number of downtown businesses, and a lot of us are thinking of ways, how can we keep ourselves relevant?
Okay.
If you look at just simply the Husker home games, it's changed the complete how everyone used to, you'd count on that money during the Husker game season. Now it's not the same anymore for those downtown businesses. So we're looking at what are other ways to keep us relevant.
Thank you.
John.
I guess the concerns I have, you have your establishment on a daily basis, and you're now wanting to take public areas and use those for your own purpose and gain. And as Mr. Fellers was saying, we've worked very hard the last decade or so to create canvases, so to speak, such as along Antelope Valley, the festival space, Pinnacle Bank Arena, which has a tremendous vista when you look at the various sports arenas, the state capitol in the background. And I'm confused at the imposition this puts on other businesses and residents for a very small business's gain. And I was even somewhat concerned on the N Street, 13th and N, that you had a year or two ago, that imposition, and as Mr. Eskridge said, it even impacted residents very far, a wide perimeter of Lincoln. And it would seem like because we now have all these venues and we've created some great backdrops, that those would be the ones you'd want to use rather than impose upon other businesses, residents, and also constrain the city on its transportation network.
Okay, all right, those are all fair questions to ask. I'd say first off, with the idea of it being a simple thing for one person's gain, in doing this whole special events, we'd be working with the Downtown Lincoln Association and working with the other small businesses in that area. With restaurants and stuff, we'd like to have them doing the concessions. So the people who are being impacted, we'd like to have them have the ability to do concessions in there. We'd like to work with some of the nonprofits that don't, I shouldn't say don't, that could utilize another platform of getting their word out, like with KZOM, the community radio station, them being attached to a series of concert events outside of a free event that's happening at Stransky Park. Same with here in Nebraska. If you look at some of the events that happen downtown, like Zoo Fest every year, it's a great event that happens downtown every year. It blocks off a lot of small businesses, but when the businesses I've talked to in some of these ways, they enjoy the fact that it changes things and it brings people to that area. So with downtown Lincoln, yes, we'd be disrupting their businesses that day, but also bringing a couple thousand people into that area to see their business, to have the ability to go to their business, and also just participate in understanding downtown's still thriving. There's a lot going on.
Other questions? I think I have a question for you. So I like the vision you're creating of a lot of choices for people in Lincoln, and ideally we'd have the festival space occupied, concerts at Antelope Park, concerts in the arena, things going on at Canopy Street, and maybe something downtown as well. Like that all of that going on creates the sense that Lincoln is alive, that there are choices, that people want to come. So I really appreciate your vision. One question that came up when we were discussing this a bit earlier had to do with whether or not public spaces like Tower Square are typically closed off to the public for private events like this one. So in your research in other communities, do you have any data about whether or not that is a common practice? And I think if you could either today or in the next week provide any of that kind of information, that might be helpful to us making more informed choice on this particular matter.
I don't have any prepared data for you except experience.
Okay.
And with my experience, what I've been really putting myself into is trying to find those things that are happening. And there's beautiful cities in this country like Austin, Texas, that has street closures all the time for different events that are happening. In Chicago, there's parks at every weekend. Even Wednesday, Thursday, Fridays, you go to Chicago, there's concerts happening somewhere. Either free admission that are sponsored by the city for some top tier acts, or there's private events that are happening, little music festivals that happen in a city park. For me, I look at it as the more ability that we have to do entertainment, and that provides that engagement for the citizens. And I think when you're stepping outside of Lincoln and you look and see what is successful for other towns, it's a good platform, it's a good trail to kind of follow. And for me, that's, I think, us doing these events, whether, one day we get city support and we're able to do, a large act for free for everyone like they do in Chicago, that'd be great. But until then, I think we have to build it, and we have to have it something that people are aware that happens and can look forward to.
All right, thank you. All right, would anyone else like to speak to this item? All right, Teresa, please call the next item.
All right, that concludes our public hearing. We can move into the voting session. Item 16, accepting the report of new and pending claims against the city and approving disposition of claims set forth for the period of July 1st through the 15th, 2016. Introduced by Eskridge.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded by Roy. And Roy.
I would, as we discussed earlier, I would like to remove from this resolution the denial of the claims for the Harders, the Wells, and the McFarlands.
Roy has made a motion, Trent has seconded it. Any discussion on the motion? Did you want to explain a little further?
We discussed it earlier that I have asked Public Works and City Law to take a look at this. It's a sewer backup issue, and there's, for those of us, I think it's all of us who've been through sewer backup issues in the recent past, we need to be sensitive to these issues with our constituents and make sure we're doing the right thing and treating them equally as to how we've treated other people.
All right, any other discussion? Cindy.
I just want to address Mr. Smith's claim. I understand his frustration, because it's true that
Point of order.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We have a motion on the.
All right. Okay, I'm sorry.
Before Laura ready to
All right, if there's no further discussion on Roy's motion, let's have a vote on that.
Fellers?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Raybold?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
Okay, now back to the main motion, and Cindy, why don't you go ahead?
Thank you. So I was saying, I understand Mr. Smith's frustration because he's right. When a criminal commits a crime, they don't stop running. However, the laws in Nebraska, as the city attorney said, the laws in Nebraska define when a chase stops for purposes of strict liability to be when the reasonable person would recognize that they're no longer being chased. And for reasonable people, there's no sirens, there's no lights, and you've turned a couple blocks. It's easy to imagine that if they were reasonable, they should recognize that there's no longer a chase. Are criminals reasonable? I don't know, but that remains the test. And so while I appreciate his frustration, I recognize he can still bring a claim if he wants in litigation, but I think that the city attorney, it sounds like they properly analyzed this particular case, and so I have no issues with it being back on our list today.
Okay, any other comments, discussion? Maybe? All right. Teresa, please call the roll on this item.
Fellers?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Raybold?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Next then is item 17, approving the use of public right-of-way by Union College for construction of seating walls, columns, arches, lighting features, and monument walls at South 48th and Prescott, introduced by Eskridge.
So moved.
Second?
Seconded by Jane. Discussion? All right, please call the roll.
Fellers?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Raybold?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Item 18 is the contract with Selectron Technologies. This is the one that Building and Safety requested we delay action on until September 12th.
Go
ahead.
I would move that we delay action until September 12th with continued public hearing.
Second?
A delay till September 12th with continued public hearing motion is made by Carl, seconded by Jane. Discussion? All right, please call the roll.
Fellers?
Yes.
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Raybold?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Item 19, public hearing ordinances, second reading is item 19. Ordinances, third reading, item 20, creating repaving District 159 in Saunders Avenue from 12th Street to 14th Street and assessing the cost thereof against the benefited properties, introduced by Raybold.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded by Carl. Discussion? Carl?
This, if anybody's had the opportunity to drive down this little two block stretch of Saunders, it's awful. If we had a list of the top 10 or bottom 10 roads in the city, this would be on the list. It's awful. Fortunately, more than 50% of the property owners along this stretch of road have agreed to a paving district. City recognizes the importance of this road and actually is footing the bill about 70% of the cost of it. So it's actually a good deal for the landowners as well as the city to address this property. Again, this won't be an official detour, but there's scheduled work to be done on both North 10th and North 14th Street, which kind of are on the ends of this street. And so it's going to be an important road that people will be using in the near future.
All right. Any further comments? Okay. Please call the roll.
Fellers?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Raybold?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Item 21 is change of zone 16018, application of St. Patrick Catholic Church for a change of zone on lots 1 through 18, block 44, Havelock, from O3 Office Park to R4 Residential, and to designate lots 1 through 18, block 44, and lots 1 through 7, block 61, Havelock, as an R4 Planned Unit Development District at 6111 Morrill Avenue, introduced by Raybold.
So moved?
Second.
Seconded by Carl. Discussion? Cindy?
Thank you. We heard last week about all the work that St. Patrick's Church has been doing in Havelock. This has been just really wonderful for the Havelock neighborhood, and I just want to congratulate them on everything they're doing out there.
Absolutely. This is going to allow them to expand and create a St. Vincent de Paul donation center, which will benefit our community. People can donate furniture and other items, and then that will in turn be shared with community members in need. So it seems like it's serving a nice public purpose. Please call the roll.
Fellers?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Raybold?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0. Item 22, change of zone 16019, application of Frida Buskirk for a change from I-1 Industrial to RT Residential Transition at 1430 South Folsom Street, introduced by Raybold.
So moved?
Second.
Seconded by Carl. Discussion? Carl?
Yeah, this was a unique situation involving one property owner, individual who owns this house and land that is residential on the sides of it. There's some industrial land behind it. This conflict with residential and industrial is not ideal, but this change actually does fit what's the land use on either side of where she lives, so would support it.
Please call the roll.
Fellers?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Raybold?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0. Item 23, street and alley vacation 16003, vacating a portion of the west one-half of South 98th Street right-of-way south of the intersection with Andermatt Drive, introduced by Raybold.
So moved?
Second.
Seconded by John. Discussion? I think this is sort of a cleanup item. This was originally a turn lane that's no longer needed. And please call the roll.
Fellers?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Raybold?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0. Item 24, approving the second management agreement for Pinnacle Bank Arena between the city and SMG for the operation and management of Pinnacle Bank Arena and other facilities for a 3-year term commencing September 1st, 2016, with the option to renew for one additional 3-year term, introduced by Raybold.
So moved?
Second.
Seconded by John. Discussion? All right. Please call the roll.
Fellers?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Raybold?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge? Motion carried, 7-0. Item 25. An ordinance amending section 1 of ordinance 20341, which only included a portion of lot 102 irregular tract located in the southeast quarter of section 29, township 10 north, range 6 east of the 6th principal median, to revise the legal description of the annexation to include all of said lot 102 IT to conform to the corporate limits map attached to and made a part of ordinance 20341, introduced by Raybold.
So moved?
Second.
Seconded by John. Discussion? Okay. Please call the roll.
Fellers?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Raybold?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0. Item 26, ordinance amending section 2 of ordinance 20342, which only included a portion of lot 102 irregular tract located in the southeast quarter of section 29, township 10 north, range 6 east, to revise the legal description of change of zone 15036 to include all of said lot 102 IT as intended by the request for ordinance and fact sheet for said change of zone, introduced by Raybold.
So moved?
Second.
Seconded by John. Discussion? Please call the roll.
Fellers?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Raybold?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0. Item 27, amending Chapter 8.32 of the Lincoln Municipal Code to increase recycling in Lincoln by requiring waste haulers to offer curbside recycling service to customers, diverting corrugated cardboard and other paper recyclables away from the landfill, increasing capacity of the free city recycling drop-off sites, improving data tracking on recycling, and implementing a community-wide recycling education campaign, introduced by Rabel.
So moved.
Second.
Second by Roy. Jane?
I move that we delay a vote on this item for 2 weeks to August 15th for a number of reasons, and I'd be happy to go into those reasons at this point. First of all, last week we heard...
Point of order. Did she have a second?
Not yet.
Yes,
I think Roy
no,
did.
No, I did not. She did not get a second for delay. I seconded the main motion.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay. Move for delay made by Jane, seconded by Carl.
Okay.
Okay.
Discussion.
Well, my concern was that there was a tremendous amount of testimony heard last week, both those in support of the recycling initiative and those that have raised some concerns about how the fines would be implemented or executed. And certainly, I think also we have had presented to us some language from the mayor's office that is attempting to address some of those concerns that were raised at the hearing last week. And at the same time, we've been presented with another amendment that would, from what I could tell from the few minutes that we had to look it over, would drastically alter the intent of that amendment. And so I think 2-week delay is certainly reasonable and practical. I certainly want to have an opportunity to get feedback from those that had expressed concerns about how the fines would be implemented, to make sure that the language that the mayor has come up with and his staff is acceptable to them and seems reasonable and is addressing all the concerns that they raised so that the recycling initiative can go forward. And at the same time, I have expressed concerns from something that's going to be introduced by Councilman Fellers that I think that certainly would involve, and I would love to have public hearing on the concerns about removing part of the language of the recycling ordinance that would really render the recycling ordinance inoperative. So I also think that it is customary for this body to have a delay to make sure that we are coming up with good public policy that addresses the concerns of many. And I think in our pre-council meeting, our directors meeting, I went back and tried to count up all the wonderful participation that we got from those who testified, as well as those who sent in emails. And the emails seemed to be coming in. There were about 20 emails that came in for those who were against the recycling initiative and had raised some concerns. But those that were in support of the recycling initiative, there were 35 in support of the initiative to move forward with recycling for the city of Lincoln, expanded recycling. And then there were 3 of them that had a response that said it needs some work. And I personally think that in order to enact good public policy, we need to go back and evaluate certainly what Councilman Fellers is looking at, but I'm more interested in really addressing the concerns that were raised and making sure that what we enact takes care of those concerns and keeps moving this initiative forward.
Discussion? Carl?
Thank you. Last week we had, as I counted, 100 people that seemed to be in the room on the recycling issue. Just counting out here, I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people in the room right now, and 1, 2, 3, 4 are city staff people. There's a lot of significant interest in terms of both residents and businesses, obviously, about this issue last week. I think judging on who people were, it looked like it was about 75 or 80% in favor of the ordinance, somewhere in that neighborhood. Received a call today about noon from an individual, and some of you might have gotten the call from this person as well, individual whose business is probably the largest commercial real estate company in the city. He talked about the hundreds of tons of materials that his business recycles every year. He said that they had a couple of concerns that they thought should be addressed, and as we talked about those issues, I thought that they were the kinds of things that we were working on in terms of being able to address. In the hearing last week, what we heard was that there was a concern about the penalty phase of how it was enforced. There was concern from landlords in particular about how this would work in rental areas and apartment buildings. And then there was a concern, which we've heard a lot about in terms of emails from contractors and how they could enforce, or how it would be enforced on them with their dumpsters and other people putting other stuff in there. So, but those are things, just had a sense that we could be able to work out. We had asked for a 2-week delay to be able to work those things out, and it seems important to me, it is important to me, that we get the very best thing in place that we possibly can to help Lincoln improve in terms of our recycling efforts and how we stack up against other communities and how we're able to extend the life of our landfill. So I would really strongly urge us to, again, as a matter of precedent, we generally always agree to an extension. It might not change your vote, but we just want to get the information and the facts. So I would strongly support the motion to delay 2 weeks.
Anyone else like to speak to the delay?
I would like a staff question, because I'm concerned about an impact on what this might be, if I could.
Okay.
Okay. Donna, could you come forward?
Good evening. I'm Donna Garden, Assistant Director of Public Works and Utilities.
Sometimes we do things to departments that we don't know. It's unintended consequences kinds of things. So if we were to take something out of this, of the ordinance that was proposed, how would that impact you?
Well, there's probably the biggest impact we would have, depending upon what was taken out of the ordinance.
Excuse me, point of order. This is about the delay, not about the amendment.
It speaks to the necessity of studying the issue so that we don't do something that would impact us. I mean, we can talk about it now, we can talk about it later. It seems to me to make sense to talk about it now.
Shall I go ahead?
I think it might be more relevant when there's another motion on the floor, but I guess in terms of staff questions, I guess I would like to know if I may, Carl, Donna, please stay. Where relevant to the delay, Jane has mentioned that you've been working to address concerns. Can you give us a status update on those the actions that you've taken since we last met here a week ago, to help us understand the progress that is in motion before we decide on whether or not to continue the delay or to oppose the delay?
Absolutely. Obviously, we heard those same concerns that Carl just mentioned, and we wanted to make sure that we had it as clear as possible in the ordinance. And I think Tim is here to talk directly to the amendments that we looked at potentially putting into the ordinance to address those specific things that Carl was talking about. And we met and we put together a draft that I think you have before you.
Okay. Can you give us the highlights of that draft, since we just received that today? Can you just explain?
Could I ask Tim to come up to
Yes.
address that?
Tim City, Law Department. I guess just to speak to the highlights of the motion to amend number 2 that's before you, the attempt was to draft an amendment that clarified that there would not be a duty on the part of a citizen not to dispose of cardboard, recyclable paper, or newsprint, but instead a requirement in the ordinance that the city would not accept those items, so that there would be no question as to whether or not there was any criminal liability for a private individual. I don't think that was the case before, but to simply make it absolutely clear, that was the change that was made. There's also a section in there that addresses specifically landlords. As you're probably all aware, there's already a section in code that requires landlords of residential properties to provide for solid waste service at those properties. This is simply an additional sentence within that section that would say there's no duty created on the part of a landlord to provide recycling service to the tenants. The purpose for that is that within the general penalty section associated with this chapter, the only time that you can have criminal liability is whether if there's a duty to do something and you fail to do it, or you violate the other provisions of the code. So that's the purpose of that one. And then there was a change made in light of a phone call that we received from one of the recycling processors who had a question as to whether or not he could collect recyclables, or whether he had to have a licensed waste hauler license at the same time. I think it was fairly clear in the previous language, but to address that to the best that we could, we proposed a short change to that would specifically lay out the exceptions rather than just including them in the operative language of that sentence. And so those are the highlights of the what we've been working on, or what I was asked to work on prior to today.
Oh, go ahead, Jane.
Well, I guess the question for any owner of a dwelling unit, they're not required to provide the occupants of that rented or leased dwelling unit recyclable containers. It's up to the private hauler, or how? I'm not sure I quite understand.
Let me ask a point of order.
Okay.
And this is addressing another amendment that hasn't been introduced.
Okay.
The motion,
Okay.
the measure on the floor is motion to delay.
Right.
I think we need to limit.
Okay.
Well, I would recommend to the chair.
Right, so what I would like to ask is just, you've got a draft of something that incorporates and addresses concerns raised and clarifies language. You weren't planning to bring this forward today. You've asked the applicant, you were looking for a delay because, even though it's mostly ready to go, because why?
Obviously, we wanted to run this past the stakeholders. We've talked to a lot of people over the time that we've worked on this recycling initiative. We wanted to make sure that we've addressed those concerns, make sure we haven't left anything out. Maybe there was something else we needed to add or adjust. So the 2 weeks was really to get input to make sure that we could cover those issues and address all the concerns that are out there.
Carl, then Jane.
Just a timing question. We had the task force that looked at recycling. How long ago did that task force meet?
Well, we started, actually, the original one was in 2013. Went from 2012 to 2013. We had the working group that put together the recommendation was a year in length. And then we had a number of stakeholder meetings, I'd say upwards of 20, 25 different stakeholder groups that we talked to.
Thank you.
Okay. Jane?
We just got this today, the amendment, and to be honest, I haven't had a chance to go through it all. That's why I have a lot of questions myself. Have any of the stakeholders that were in the smaller group, have they had a chance to review this and get their input or feedback on the proposed amendment changes?
No, I don't believe so. I think we've sent some copies out to various groups, but I don't think we've received a lot of feedback from it as of yet.
So the goal was to really get their input and any other concerns that need to be tweaked before you were going to come back to us with an amendment that hopefully addressed any concerns they had.
That's correct.
Okay.
Is there any further discussion on the motion to delay? All right, Teresa, please call the roll.
Fellers?
No.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Lamb?
No.
Raybold?
Yes.
Camp?
No.
Christensen?
No.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Motion lost, 3-4.
I would move the motion to amend number 2. If I may.
Okay.
Second?
All right, moved by
Point of
Carl,
order.
second.
I would appreciate the courtesy of being recognized for the chair since I have motion to amend number 1. I would have liked to be recognized by the chair to make my motion ahead of my colleague, but I guess that's not going to happen, so.
Would you cede your motion and allow Trent to go first?
Sure.
Okay, let's do that.
Move to amend with motion amendment number 1 to bill number 1677 as follows. Strike section 2 from the bill, and number 2, strike page 11. On page 11, strike section 8, line 12, that contains at a minimum, and replace said language with shall contain only. And number 3, strike any reference to section 832.4 040 introduction and section 10 of the bill.
Second.
Okay, moved by Trent, seconded by Roy. Discussion.
The reason for the request is I, over the course of the hearing last week, I've listened to a lot of people. We had this ordinance a couple of weeks before it was introduced for public hearing. My motion strikes the banning of corrugated cardboard, other recyclables away from the landfill, and changes a section on the reporting to contains at a minimum of the language that's actually in the waste haulers would report back to the city. If I'm reading it just from the ordinance itself, or the proposed changes would be the number of recycling customers, the types of materials collected, total weight of recyclables, total weight of by type, and material and type, and the locations where those were delivered. I think that I really like this section because it allows us to grab data on what's actually happening in recycling in the community. I think there's been some discrepancy in those numbers where we say, well, 50% of people surveyed are using the drop-off points. There's a 22% number out there. There's also maybe a 25 to 30% number of people that are doing curbside recycling. I think this allows us to get the hard numbers on, it allows us to get the hard numbers on what is really going on in recycling in the community. And by taking away the items being banned from the landfill, it still gives us the ability to do education campaigns. It still gives people the ability to have recycling offered by their hauler to them twice a year. So if they weren't, my amendment basically removes a couple of different provisions from the bill, but keeps most of the bill intact and moves the city forward. Moves the city forward in recycling, and I think it's a good proposal that deserves our support.
Discussion? Jane and Carl.
Well, since we have not had much time to digest what you are presenting, and since there has been no public input on what you're proposing, and reading what you're suggesting and proposing, your proposal would eviscerate the intent of the recycling ordinance. I'd like to point out that there was a Solid Waste 2040 task force that met for 9 months. I was on that task force where we collected data. We looked at other municipalities, how they went about recycling, what were the items that they recycled, what was the impact to their municipalities. And I'd like to say that they're in a continuation of that dialogue and discussion. They met with the stakeholders for further understanding of how to implement it, how to make sure that this is something that the City of Lincoln could execute very clearly. What you're proposing is to eliminate the recyclable cardboard ban that goes into effect April 1st, 2017. You're also proposing to remove the newsprint being removed from the landfill on doing away with that the following year of 2018. And you're also saying that you don't want to see recyclable papers be redirected from the landfill, which would go into effect 2019. I just want to point out that there have been so many initiatives on recycling that have been embraced enthusiastically by not only business, and in fact, I think businesses are the leaders in many ways on recycling initiatives in going to zero waste. And certainly the University of Nebraska is one of the leading recyclers on initiatives like this. I can see the residents have been embracing recycling and looking for opportunities to make it easier and more convenient for them to do this. The recycling ordinance gives them the opportunity to use some of the 28 locations around the city to take all these materials that we're proposing to be phased out of the landfill. So I certainly cannot support this. And I cannot support something that we don't work together cooperatively and take into consideration the input of so many who have testified and given their ideas on how to make it better and how to make our city better. And recycling is one of the initiatives that certainly can make our city better. I know that there have been many business leaders that have come out in support of this because this is something that most municipalities are embracing. And I think of some of the concerns that have been raised by the property managers and commercial, retail facilities. They're saying, well, you know, we don't want to be fined. We're concerned about the fines. We're concerned about the penalties. And I think basically the amendment that will be proposed after this one pretty much takes care of that and addresses their concerns. But I don't know that for a fact because we just got that as well. And I want the opportunity to reach out to them to get their input on it to make sure that we are doing the right thing and that we are doing the right thing for the future of our city. You know, I talk a lot about, and I've said this to the Chamber of Commerce because many of the business people are such supporters of recycling and going a step further. When we enacted the ban on grass clippings, I don't think anybody measured exactly how much tonnage was redirected until we implemented that ban on grass clippings and yard waste, and then we started to track it. I think what you're proposing is just to do the educational side of it, which is an integral part of the recycling initiative, the education to make sure that people understand it. But I've traveled around the United States and I see how easy it is for municipalities to offer different type of containers for different type of recycling materials and how readily it is embraced. The one thing that we talk about with recycling, whatever your motivation, it's important to our community. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce talks a lot about it, how important it is to businesses. And I, as a business person, can tell you firsthand that it has impacted our business in a positive way and made us more competitive and made us more innovative and made us more creative, as all other businesses. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce talks to businesses and say, look, you can go from trash to treasure. There is innovative ways to reuse a lot of materials. Pope Francis, whatever the directive you feel, it's a moral imperative that this is something of our common home that we have to take initiative on. We have to figure out how to extend the life of our landfill. This takes us a step backward, a step way backward, by not embracing these type of initiatives. So I cannot support the changes that you've made for a number of reasons. We need public input. We don't have the input necessary to go forward with just gutting the entire ordinance on recycling.
Carl?
Okay, thank you. Donna, could I ask Donna for
Yes.
staff? Maybe I'll be able to do that this time. So again, the question is about unintended consequences and what this might do, taking the paper out, the mandatory paper out of the landfills plan.
Yeah, there's a concern there because our applications for the two grant programs that we have, one is for education. It's worth about $225,000. And of course, the cardboard bins that we have that we're actually adding at our drop-off sites, worth $114,000, would be at risk. Both those applications were made with the basis that if this passed council, that the program would be some form of the landfill ban associated with cardboard. And the education program would be designed around that. We would probably lose both of those grants.
Okay, thank you.
Could I?
Yeah, sure, staff question.
But it talks about the grant money. Can you talk about dollars exactly? How much grant money are we talking about, and how much money is at risk?
$225,000, and then also that was for the educational program, and $114,000 for the additional cardboard bins at our drop-off sites.
So basically, we would lose. I know Councilman Fellers had proposed just going with the educational component only, but I believe that lists it as, is it 600,000 or 800,000 for the educational
We
outreach?
have approximately $500,000 that was appropriated the last budget cycle, and then in this cycle we just have match funds basically for those two grants.
Trent.
I don't think I proposed education only. I think I'm proposing the entire recycling ordinance with the exception of a couple different provisions in there, which are the bans of items and a change in wording on page 11. I'm not saying education only. I'm leaving intact containers that recyclables should be carried around in, different provisions on vehicles being kept maintained. So I take exception to the fact that this is being framed as an education only. This is a good thing. This is something that is moving us forward on recycling. This certainly could have been a provision that was voted down, but this is something that moves the community forward and enhances our ability to collect data on recycling, have some additional specifications on waste haulers and recyclers in the community. And so I guess I don't appreciate it being framed as an education-only thing, because there's obviously a lot more in this ordinance than it's being portrayed. Thank you.
Okay, wasn't finished.
Carl,
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so those are the funding issues, some grant funding that we have out there. Okay. I don't think I have any more questions for you, Donna. Okay. This motion, again, I don't know how you guys do your work, but I work really hard on the weekends, especially, get everything figured out, working even a couple weekends ahead when we get first reading, knowing what's coming. This one and the agenda request for delay 2 weeks, that was my expectation. This coming into today. I actually left my ordinance at home because this wasn't supposed to come up today. I was in a meeting at work, get an email after I'm out of that about 1 o'clock and see, this proposal that we're not going to have a 2-week delay, but that we go forward. And as I read it, I asked Trent about it because it looked to me like first thing is strike section 2 from the bill. Okay, so as I looked at section 2, I thought, okay, there are 2 sanitary landfills, North 48th Street and Bluff Road. Does this remove those? Apparently, it's clarified that it doesn't remove those because those aren't in the bill. The bill are the recyclable cardboard, newsprint, recyclable paper. It's just come too fast. And while Trent says that this is something that is intended to be good for recycling in our community, that it doesn't, pardon the pun, trash the ordinance. I don't know that. I haven't looked at it. I haven't studied it. I honestly don't quite understand and know what this does. Is it good enough or not? So I'm going to oppose the motion.
Cindy.
Thank you. So last week we were here and we listened to hours of testimony, and person after person, business owner after business owner, landlord after landlord got up, and I think every one of them to a person said, I recycle. And Councilman Christensen even asked them, do you use the curbside, do you use the drop-offs? And a number of people said they did both. And what I heard over and over again, in fact, I specifically addressed one of the recyclers. I heard that anyone who wants to recycle in Lincoln has access to recycling. And I heard that we have made great progress as a community, in personal and individuals and businesses recycling at their homes and their places of business. But what I heard is probably that's because of education on the issues, and I think education is a big component. But I think one of the great things about the ordinance, and that hasn't been changed, is that by haulers offering the service and being required to offer the service to their customers, is that there will be notice of the fact that there is another option for you, and more people will become educated. As Donna said, there's $500,000 in funds already available for the education component that was already set aside. So, and I was a little concerned about the lack of data, and or I should say more recent data, apart from just these loads of people who were saying so many of them were recycling. And the letters have said the same thing, I think. As far as having more public input, we had a lot of public input, and our process allows for first reading and then a public hearing. We had a public hearing, the process, and then it's not unusual for something to come forward to this body, and on third reading, which is the voting session, to have an amendment offered. And so I have concerns I had concerns about delaying, because I think that, there's some budget implications in this ordinance as it is sitting right now. I think that as the amendment that Councilman Fellers offers, it encourages people to recycle. It allows that encouragement without making certain things mandatory and banned and making people nervous about it. Instead, it encourages them. I've always preferred the carrot approach to the stick approach, and I feel like the ordinance as it is now is more of a stick, and I think that Councilman Feller's amendment is logical, it's reasonable. At this point in time, it addresses the concerns that we heard last week and through the mail. So I think that it's a good amendment, and I'm going to support it.
Jane.
I have some more questions I'd like to ask John, but I have to tell you that from my perspective, the diversion without the education is like educating a baker. You just give the baker, you keep training the baker, but you don't give the baker the oven. And I think this I guess, amendment is truly pretty much half-baked, in the sense that you're not giving the people in our community all the tools they need, nor are you allowing the community to execute without the diversion component on it. So, John, can you talk about, exactly without diversion, where does that leave recycling?
Well, it's pretty clear, and we talked about this last week, that you really need all four of the components. You need the policy that diverts the paper fiber, you need the education, you need the accessibility, and you need the free drop-off sites. So while it is true that some of those things are maintained under this amendment, the loss of the diversion policy essentially removes the effectiveness of the ordinance. This has been studied, this has been analyzed not only by the task force, but by the consultants and by Nationwide. Again, they'll support their position and they'll vote for their position. But just to be clear, the recommendation, the amendment, it will spend $500,000 in education funds potentially. It will require that Donna returns $340,000 in state grant funds. But what it won't do is significantly increase recycling in Lincoln. And the reason we know that is because the consultants and our nationwide analysis has shown that education without a diversion policy change
only increases recycling between 1% and 3%. Education alone only moves the needle between 1% and 3%. If you implement a diversion policy change along with the education, and that would be the point of the education, is to help people understand what the additional diversion is. If you do that, that returns between 10 and 30 times the increase in recycling. So if you want to talk just in terms of strictly cost-benefit analysis, we can spend $500,000 on education, but without the diversion policy, you're spending money, you're not significantly increasing recycling in Lincoln. That's just the hard fact.
So we would lose the grant funding of $339,000 without the diversion component.
My understanding is those grants were written contingent upon passage of the Recycle Lincoln policy.
I'm hearing a lot of, I think, I haven't heard yes.
Donna, could you come up and address that then?
In terms of the two grants, those two grants were written with the diversion of materials, cardboard included in them. And without that in there, they are not valid. We would have to turn that money back to NDEQ.
You're absolutely 100% sure.
I'm sure.
Send me the grants, please.
Good reason.
Does that mean you would reconsider a delay then?
No. I think we're throwing so much out here. There's still the opportunity to recycle. We're throwing a lot of emotional pleas here. This is a good community. I don't want to see, what I've been hearing, what I heard last week and intervening week is people say, I don't want the heavy hand of government on top of me. Everybody is saying I recycle, but there's some situations where you're imposing a lot of other restrictions on people. And so I think what Mr. Fellers has proposed here, it's another step forward, and let's go with that and encourage recycling in that manner. And it's still, you know, you say we don't have opportunities, we're taking opportunities away for people to recycle. No, in fact, let's add some more sites. You know, we're not taking opportunities, those sites are there.
Maybe
So
if we
the
had
opportunities are there.
$339,000 more, we could add additional sites, but we're just
Well,
throwing
maybe-
away money that I think for us is pretty relevant to the budget issues that we're going to be facing in 2 weeks.
There are a lot of strings to those that affect our citizens, our businesses. You're talking about homeowners that can't afford homes as it is because of the extra expense. You're throwing a bigger expense here on contractors. There are huge unintended consequences here. Let's be reasonable for our citizens. We're all saying we support recycling. Home builders, everybody who testified, as Mr. Christensen asked, do you have curbside? Yes, I have curbside. So,
Roy.
I appreciate everything everybody's saying, and I hope I can say what I need to say without rambling at all. But I can tell you that I like recycling, and I love liberty, and those two things are not mutually exclusive. To give you an idea of my commitment to recycling, my wife did not want to recycle. She thought it was a burden that she didn't want to, it was just one more thing for her. And so I found a way to persuade her to do recycling in our home. I bought her a baby grand piano and said the price is recycling in our home. That's my kind of commitment to recycling. But my commitment to liberty goes even further. And John talked about the heavy hand of government. I believe we owe it to the citizens of Lincoln. I think higher of them than they have to be compelled to do the right thing. We can educate them, we can persuade them. If everybody in the city of Lincoln right now who recycles would go persuade their neighbor who doesn't recycle, we would double our recycling rate. If people are that committed to recycling, let them either buy a baby grand piano or go persuade their neighbor, whichever is easier. We can do this without mandates. And I support Mr. Feller's amendment.
Question for John or Donna.
Just make the last, go ahead.
Can you talk a little bit about when we implemented the ban on yard waste? How was that handled and how was that processed? And how was it presented to the community? I just remember when I moved back 13 years ago that that's what everybody did. It was just no big deal.
I think it was a learning process, obviously, but it was a hard ban. It went into effect on a certain date, and from then on, obviously, there was learning to be done by the whole community, and we work through it together. Now, like we've testified earlier, we've never had a citation on that. Yes, we've had issues here and there, but for the most part, it's very, very successful, and I think we owe that a lot to our hauling community as well as anyone, because they help us make sure that the materials are going to the right place.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further council discussion? I'll just add a bit then. I think we all support recycling. I think that is one thing we've all said we can agree on, and that's a good thing. And I think the argument is about how to move that needle most effectively. And what I appreciate about the work of the task force and the stakeholder groups and the data that we have available to us, that includes not only the 2008 waste characterization study, but also more recent data from landfill collection sites, is that despite our love of recycling in this community, we can do a lot better. We are still filling our landfill with cardboard, paper, newspaper that could be recycled. In fact, those items, are a huge chunk of what goes into the landfill each year. And, that comes at a cost. This isn't just about the environment. This isn't just about great feelings we all have about doing the right thing by recycling. This is about fiscal responsibility and taxes and the rates we pay. That landfill, as we grow, is going to continue to fill up. And if we can divert more items from the landfill, we put off the cost of expanding and building another one. And at last check, a few years ago, that cost was a $10 million price tag, not including the closure costs on the current landfill. As elected officials, we have to think not only about what's right before us, but the costs coming down the road. If we can put off the cost of that landfill build out, that leaves more money for our budget today and tomorrow and the next year after that. So there are budget implications that go way beyond the rates that we charge people to dump things in the landfill. The budget implications are that for every year that we can put off the cost of that new landfill, we have more money available to fund infrastructure needs that we have today. Imagine if we had to build a new landfill sooner. Think how hard it has been in our budget discussions in recent weeks to try and identify places to cut. No one's even proposed a tax cut because we can't find that much money to shave off. Imagine if we were trying to plan for a $10 million price tag. So this is about fiscal responsibility, making sure that people don't have to have the additional cost of a landfill coming any sooner than it needs to. And when we talk about the heavy hand of government, I would just say, we already divert toxic materials, tires, appliances, leaves and lawn clippings. Are we really going to draw the line on cardboard? Cardboard and paper products for which there is actually a market for recycling? These products were picked for a reason. Not only are they significant in terms of what is dumped in our landfill today, they are also things for which there is an economy in the recycling community. Glass, not so much. We hope to have that in the future, but we're picking the things that we think work with our recycling processors and our haulers that will help them be able to succeed as they adapt their business to new realities. So for the budget implications that this has, for the fiscal responsibility that I see associated with what the administration has been putting forward, I would support a delay to try and make sure we're being responsive to these concerns, but this new motion, which really does eliminate and eviscerate the guts of what this recycling ordinance is intending to do, I can't see how that is fiscally responsible. It won't move the needle. And then we are spending money to do very little, and I can't support that. Please call the roll.
Fellers?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
No.
Lamb?
Yes.
Raybold?
No.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
No.
Motion carried 4-3.
Okay, Carl.
I'd like to introduce a motion to amend number 2.
Second.
Okay. I wish I could expound for hours and hours upon the benefits of motion to amend number 2, because I think it's important. But I don't know absolutely for sure how important it is. So I would like to ask Tim C. if he could come forward and help to enlighten us, one and all, on what we have had instructed this city to be doing in response to last week's hearing and the concerns that we heard from the 100 or so people that were here to talk to us.
I guess with respect to motion to amend number 2, Councilman, to be perfectly clear, paragraphs 1, 2, and 3 are really no longer applicable because section 2 has been eliminated from the bill. Just to be frank about it, so we'd only be talking about sections 4, 5, and 6. Those are intended to address a concern raised by a license or a recycling processor who is concerned about their ability to collect recycling without getting a licensed waste or a waste hauler's license. So those are the attempt in 4, 5, and 6 is to clarify that. And then with respect to section 7, we are the language is intended to again make clear that there's no duty on the part of a landlord to provide recycling services for their residential tenants.
All right.
So you said there is no duty, or there is a duty?
I believe it specifically says in the underlying language, none of the requirements of this section shall constitute a duty on the part of any owner of a dwelling unit to provide for separate collection and removal of recyclables.
Okay. Tim, so last week at the hearing, we heard what I stated earlier, concern about the penalty phase. And with the action that we just took, that is taken that out of the ordinance, is that
It takes it out with respect to anyone trying to take cardboard or paper or newsprint to the landfill. There's still the requirement that that a waste hauler not combine recyclables that have been separated at the source to mix them in with their truck and to haul everything as one to the landfill. That would still be a potential criminal action, but
okay, and that penalty then is on the hauler.
It's on the hauler, yes.
Okay, it's not something that would apply to whoever it is that the hauler is serving. Okay. Then again, what I recalled from testimony from particularly from the business interests was concern about how it would work for landlords. Are there any requirements in terms of things in place for landlords now, or I guess what you were working on? I mean, you had in your point 7, I think, that was something that you had proposed going forward.
Right. This was language with the combination of sections 1, 2, and 3 of the motion to amend number 2 and section 7. The attempt was to remove any notion that there would be some criminal liability on the part of a landlord for the actions of their tenants. But that was the attempt, was to clarify that issue.
Okay, and then the other issue I think that came forward was the question about contractors, and I didn't really see anything in here about contractors.
No, that you won't see that specifically addressed in here. The language was previously in the ordinance that a business would be able to haul from their own business operations, but that was the best that we had put together at this point. We hadn't spoken with the contractors yet about that issue.
So that was something you were intending to work on?
These are the proposals we put together that are before you now, and that's really all I can probably talk about.
Okay.
Trent, oh, sorry, are you done?
Go ahead and finish, please.
Well, again, what I'm trying to show here is this really was a work in progress from what we were doing last week to trying to put together a package that would identify these things. What you've presented to us at this point is it's not the finished product, but it's something to help us get to what we had the hearing about, and to address the concerns that were raised by all of the people, I think, that were here as best as possible, to make it an appropriate ordinance for the community.
Certainly that was the attempt with the language that was before you in motion to amend number 2.
Okay, thank you.
Trent?
So Tim, which items in motion to amend number 2 would be struck because they were items that were in my motion to amend number 1?
Sections 1, 2, and 3 in motion to amend number 2.
Okay, so 1, 2, and 3. Any others?
I don't believe so. No, I don't think anything else was affected by that.
Okay. I'd be willing to support that, since if 1, 2, and 3 were struck as a friendly amendment, I'd be willing to support motion to amend number 2.
Okay, is there any further
Right here.
discussion? John? John?
Address, Mr. C, the situation, you've got section 7 here, and it says there's not a duty to provide that constitute a duty on the part of any owner to provide a separate collection, yet with the way it stands now with 1, 2, and 3 eliminated, what happens if it's all commingled? It could still then be taken to the dump, say in the case of a landlord who has a number of residents.
I believe it's still be taken to the dump. The only thing that's, and it's not in the motion to amend, it's in, I think it's in section proposed 8.32.135 or 136 that says that if recycling has been separated, recyclables have been separated, and the hauler comes along and commingles them, then that's a problem. But I don't believe there's anything that says the landlord has to separate it or provide separate collection totes or anything like that.
One of the big concerns we heard last week was like home builders, for example, a smaller one who has a roll-off and then accepts already tires and all kinds of stuff that people do, but if they suddenly contaminate a site or whatever, what happens then?
Under this, as it stands, I believe there would be no liability under this, because it wasn't commingled by a hauler. I guess it was commingled by a bad actor that I guess can't be accounted for to some extent. So I don't know that concern goes away. Councilman Camp is the best way to probably answer that question.
You have a separate dumpster for cardboard. So there's, under what's been amended by Mr. Fellers, so the attempt to try, to do the responsible thing, and then somebody comes and contaminates that, and the waste hauler says, gee, I'm not going to take that. Or is that what happens in that situation?
Well, I think if the waste hauler says they're not going to take it, that's an issue between a waste hauler and the private customer. I don't know that that's
But in the original language, then it'd be left to the property owner to do something with that.
right.
Okay.
Jane?
I have a question for Donna. How is it currently handled when a contractor brings in a roll-off that has been contaminated with tires, which is something that the landfill will not accept? How is it currently handled?
If the operators notice it and they see the tires coming out of the truck, they ask the driver to remove them. We have a special receptacle at the landfill for all of those banned items, and they're removed from the landfill face and put into those special receptacles.
Is that hauler then fined for those tires?
No, not unless the hauler refuses to remove that material.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Jane?
Again, I'm concerned. I just wish that we had an opportunity of a delay to take this out and get the feedback from the construction industry that has roll-offs. I'd like to hear more from multifamily housing owners on how they envision this, and is the language in this amendment sufficient enough to address some of their concerns about the fines, the penalties, the strong arm of government? I want to make sure that we've addressed those concerns, because of course that's not something that we're all advocating either. I would like that opportunity, and I'd ask my colleagues to see if they would reconsider and give a 2-week delay so that we could go out and get the feedback that we need to keep tweaking it, to make it better.
Cindy, then Trent.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Tim, I had a question on the motion amendment number 2. If the page numbers change on its say for instance, item number 4, page 9, line 1, that would be, you would take that into account. We wouldn't be amending something that would be different, based on my amendment and lines changing.
I'll let Jeff interject here if he disagrees, but I think we're amending the original bill, and any page references or line references would have to be to the original, just because we're not republishing a.
So there's
piece
some
of
legislative
legislation.
intent of, what was originally proposed and what we would be amending towards towards the original proposed document, right?
Right, the final version would follow the clear intent of the drafters as amended.
Got it.
In this case, when you only have 2 amendments, that's not gonna be very challenging.
I'm asking for my lawyer friend over here who's.
More concerned about pagination. So I was wondering if the amendments were going to change the pagination.
Well, even if they did, I think what we would do, though, is if both amendments pass, for example, we take the original and apply both amendments so that it reflects what we believe is the legislative intent. And as I say, with 2 amendments, I don't think that would be too difficult.
Okay.
With this particular approach. I could see some circumstances where that might be problematic, but with these 2 amendments, I think we can handle it.
I don't know what pagination means, but.
Page number changes.
Okay.
Lawyer talk.
Yeah.
It's lawyer talk.
Cindy, did you still want to talk?
No, that was
Okay.
my question.
John.
Madam Chair, I'd make a motion to amend number 2, deleting items 1, 2, and 3.
Do we need that, or is they?
I'd offered it as a friendly amendment to Carl's, but if he's willing to take that, if not.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. So we have,
Clarify the friendly amendment.
we have the motion to amend number 2 on the floor with the friendly amendment to strike lines 1, 2, and 3.
Paragraphs 1, 2, and 3.
Paragraphs 1, 2, and 3, pardon me. Is there any further discussion?
On that motion to amend.
Yeah.
Well, are we consolidating all in one motion then?
No,
This
I just wanna
is
make
an
sure.
amendment
Or is
to,
mine
This
one
is-
separate motion and
No,
then
you-
Carl's?
Your motion is gone because
his was
Carl
already on the
accepted
table.
it as a friendly table because Carl
okay,
accepted it as a friendly
okay.
amendment.
Just one clarification.
Thank you.
Okay.
Now we have this motion to take items 4 through 8 and apply them to the ordinance in addition to what has already passed the council. Motion number 1, motion to amend number 1. So is there any further discussion on this motion that includes the friendly amendment? Jane?
Again, I cannot support it because I don't think it's good policy to make it without going back to those that had raised legitimate concerns and to all those people that stood in support of taking recycling further. And I think requesting a delay is very reasonable. It does no harm to the initiative, but it certainly allows us to get the feedback that we need to make good policy. So I am not going to support this.
Carl?
I will support it just because I think it's important that we do try to move forward. But the questions of pagination certainly could be clarified in a 2-week period of time. There also could be other questions that could be answered as well. I think it would be cleaner and much better if we were to delay this after this has been looked at for 3 years. 2 weeks really shouldn't matter very much. But at any rate, I will support it.
I will support it as well because it reflects the efforts of the administration to try and address concerns raised in our public hearing. I think it will make what I consider to now be a substandard piece of legislation a little bit better because it does reflect requests we had from the public. But I really feel the way this is working out without giving the applicant the courtesy of a delay is really an example of the council not working at its finest hour. Please call the roll.
Fellers,
Yes.
Gaylor Baird,
Yes.
Lamb,
Yes.
Raybold,
No.
Camp,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
Eskridge.
Yes.
Motion carried 6-1. Now we need to vote on the main motion.
Okay. Any
Call the
further
question.
discussion on the main motion, Carl?
Yes. There's no question, you know, we need to recycle. I think most people want to recycle, according to people that responded to Roy's question last week. Almost unanimously, I think people said that they are recycling, but we'll see. For some reason, the numbers show that we aren't recycling very well in this community, and we obviously need to do better. I mean, we need to do better to extend the life of our landfill. We need to do better because there are people that can get jobs working in the recycling industry, and we're putting people to work if we increase recycling. We're allowing people to make money out of trash. So it's a good economic benefit to the community in many respects. So how do we do it? How do we make this work? Well, you know, I think there was legitimate concern we heard last week about the penalty phase of it. You know, what's the price you pay if you don't recycle or if you get caught putting cardboard in your trash? Well, the heavy-handed threat of government locking people up or, you know, fining them huge amounts of dollars is obviously a concern. I don't really want anything in the books that says we're going to do that if we don't do it. We want to have a correct penalty. 12 years or however long it's been that we've had the grass and leaf law in effect, never once has that been prosecuted. So if that's not what we're going to do, we probably should change the penalty of how that's in place. We're not a police state. That's not how this works. This is not something that we do in Lincoln. We did hear from a business owner, and the one thing I thought of over this week as I was thinking about I think I counted about 50 people we heard from last week. One business owner testified and said, you recycle because it's simply the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do. And we need to make it more available. We need to increase it. It needs to be a community, really a strong community initiative that we recycle in this town. I did hear on the radio this weekend one really uninformed caller speculate about it. And this individual said that, you know, what could happen here is that this goes into effect, and then all of a sudden the city council yanks all of those recycling centers around so that the businesses and homeowners in this community are forced to pay the garbage haulers to come get their trash. Well, that's just foolishness. That's not what we're about in this community. We're a community that really tries to help. You know, we're a community that wants to make it as easy as possible for people to come forward and to be able to recycle. So I just would hope that as we do go forward that we have good common sense about how we're doing this. It's not only paper products, there are a whole lot of things. I hear in the early hours of the morning when trash haulers come in my neighborhood, the musical sound of beer bottles clanking in dumpsters or from dumpsters into garbage trucks. And glass is an issue for me. I would like to see us do something different with that. That stays in the landfill a whole very, very, very long time. It occupies a lot of space and weight in getting it in there. Thank you.
Jane.
Well, I, first of all, want to thank all those participants of the 2040 Solid Waste Task Force and really delving into the issue on how to prolong the utility and life of our landfill. It does become a fiscal responsibility, and it is a fiscal issue. I also want to thank the people that were on the stakeholder team because they did the heavy lifting. They really dug into all the data, the details, the hours, the staff time. I want to thank the staff for really trying to come up with ways to make our Lincoln better, and recycling is one area for improvement. I really want to thank all the people that came out and testified. Obviously, there's a lot of passion about this and commitment to recycling and to doing steps that grow our city and take on more challenges. I really commend the business industry that has been solidly supporting this as a step in the right direction because it opens up avenues of innovation. I know, Lyrian, you talked about how businesses are looking for creative ways of using cardboard, and certainly our company is one of them. And turkey farmers and poultry farmers are looking at reusing cardboard, and the farmers for crops are looking at reusing the cardboard sold by the turkeys and the chickens and adding nutrients and fertilizer to their fields to grow our crops in innovative ways. I don't consider this a setback. I consider it something that we're going to continue to work on, continue to raise awareness in our community of why it's so important. Not only is it the fiscal issue, but it's the right thing to do. And I think we all can do better, and I think working together with the community, we will continue to strive for ways to come up with recycling initiatives, innovation that Lincoln can be very proud of.
Roy.
Well, I have a high regard for the people who live and work in Lincoln, Nebraska. And I think most of them, given the opportunity, will do the right thing for the right reason, that we are generally a virtuous community. And this ordinance, as it stands right now, is gentle persuasion in the right direction, and I think it will be effective. I intend to support it.
Anyone else? I would just go back to, again, the purpose of the diversion is to make sure that we actually do move the needle on recycling so that we do save costs of building out a new landfill, so that we do create a better recycling economy in our community, and we do actually have the best use of the dollars that we receive from the NDEQ, that our education dollars go the farthest. We've been told that recycling education without diversion might move the needle 1 to 3%. That means we'd go from maybe 22% recycling rate in our community to 25% at most. You know, that's 10% below the national average. I don't want a city that's 10% below the national average. We're at the top of the list on so many other ways, and we could be there in recycling too. I don't see any reason to slow down our progress, because I agree, people want to do the right thing, and if we provide this next step in the diversions that we've already done at the landfill, we're on track to just be, you know, on average. It'd be nice to go further. You know, a lot of cities do even more and offer curbside composting. We're not even talking about that. This isn't that ambitious of a piece of legislation. So I want to thank all the people who came out and supported the Recycle Lincoln initiative. That has not what we're passing here today. We're passing a much more limited piece of legislation. But we do appreciate the work, the volunteer work that many people put into the stakeholder committee, the task force, and all the information and data that was gathered to inform the original piece of legislation. I hope that we can get back on track in the future. I'm very disappointed in where this is headed today. It's minimal progress and minimal gain. Please call the roll.
Fellers?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
No.
Lamb?
Yes.
Raybold?
No.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
No.
Motion carried 4-3. Our resolutions on first reading are items 28 through 44. Ordinances on first reading are 45 and 46.
Before we adjourn, just wanted to clarify the note at the end of our agenda that since we're having the budget hearings next week, we're not going to have open mic next week, but the open mic will be the third Monday, August 15th.
Thank you for that clarification.
Madam Chair, I'd move for adjournment.
Okay, seconded by Roy. Please call the roll.
Fellers?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Raybold?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0.
We are adjourned.